Yo, what's up everyone? I hope you're doing well. Since we don't have a lot of movie news to talk about so far in August, I want to do a quick review of a show I just rewatched, which is Arcane on Netflix. It's based off of League of Legends. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend watching this show because I'm going to go all in depth on spoilers on this one. But if you have seen it, let's go ahead and review this. Alright, before we get into the main details of the show, I want to go on over a quick plot description of it. It starts the origin of two iconic league champions set in the utopia of Piltover and the oppressed underground of Zon. So yeah, before I watched the show, I didn't know anything really about League of Legends and the characters. I mean, sure, I played it a couple times, just turned it on Steam on my old computer like a while ago, but I didn't really get with any of the characters or storylines of. I didn't even know any of these league characters had storylines to begin with. So I was actually very interested in watching this show. It came on 2021, late 2021, and I was actually very late to the bandwagon of this show. I don't know why I was so late, because it's like a steampunk science fiction show, and that's like all up my alley. But I was very late to this show, and when I watched it the first time, I didn't really pay too much attention to the show because I wasn't really feeling it, but I finished it. I thought it was great. But I just watched it for a second time last week, and it's amazing. It really is. It's very different when you're actually paying attention to a show. 2021, I didn't pay attention to what I watched, so that's on me. But now I do. I pay attention to what I watch more, and this show is freaking fantastic. The plotline is so good, so seamless. I really like where they're going with this. And what's magical about the show is that you don't have to have played League of Legends to understand where your characters are and where they're coming from, because they do such a good job explaining the plot lines, explaining the characters, explaining the backgrounds, explaining where your characters are going through this series, the emotions, the relationships, the action, the magic of the show. I think that the creators of the show did such a good job at realizing that a lot of their viewers are people that haven't played League of Legends and really haven't gotten along with the game and don't really mix with both. Some people are watching the show, just watching the show. Some people just played the game and are watching the show, so it's very different. And I like how the creators let the show really work for people who haven't played the game, but it also works for people who have played the game. That kind of brings me to my next point of this might be the best animated show I've ever seen. I've seen a crazy amount of animated shows, and I think the only one that could really go against this show could be Avatar: The Last Airbender. But still, I think this show is the best animated show because it's just one season and it is literally legendary. It's so perfect. I think all the storylines are perfect. The cliffhanger is perfect. The amount of emotions that the show makes you feel, like happiness, sadness, like extreme forgiveness for some of these characters that you really hated during the first half of the series, and then the second half you actually forgive them for a lot of their sins. It's kind of crazy how League of Legends, like a League of Legends show, can do this to you and it can make you feel this many ways. And this show was actually coming out at a time where you didn't really get a lot of content. 2021 was a time where you weren't getting too much content, where you're just getting back into the thick of things, getting back into like getting a lot more movies. Like Dune came out during this show, and then Spider-Man No Way Home came out after that. We were just getting back into the thick of things, and this show really ignited a lot of animation, I think, because after this we got Invincible, which is also an amazing show that I'm planning on reviewing here before season 2 happens. And I don't know, man, I really am gonna say that I think this is my favorite animated show, and it might be a top 3 overall show after a second watch, because I do plan on rewatching this again every month, to be honest, maybe a couple times a year, because it's just that good and such an easy watch. I think it's only like 7 hours to watch the whole show, so easily on my day off I could just rewatch the whole show. It's that good. And I think everyone can find something to love with this show. If you don't like animation, you can still find something to love with the characters, because there's so many different timelines, so many different themes and characters that have so many different layers. Like, I feel like if you love just writing in the show, this show has great writing, so I think you'll love that of it. But honestly, I wasn't expecting this show to change so much on rewatch for me, but it did. It did. Just focusing on a show so much more can change your perspective on thinking of like a show or a movie. So that kind of leads me to rewatching things, because a perspective can really change if you like it a lot more, if you hate it a lot more. Like, I don't know, I can't think of too many examples more than this. I mean, La La Land is one of them, where I think it's like a top 10 movie of mine on second watch. On first watch, I thought it was just fine. And there's so many other movies like that, like Dunkirk, I thought was better on the second watch. So many different other movies, like Denis Villeneuve's movies. I think they're all like insanely amazing after second watch. Like if you watch those movies multiple times, you can find so many different things about them you didn't notice the first watch, like Arcane. And the reason I think this show is better than Avatar: The Last Airbender, because this is literally season 1 and it's this good. I think Avatar: The Last Airbender became like perfect in the third like kind of book. I know it's like based on book 1, book 2, book 3. I think it became perfect in book 3. I don't think book 1 is as seamless as book 2 and 3, but I still think that show's like a 9.5 out of 10. I think that show is awesome. I think it's top 10 overall for me shows wise, but I don't really have a top 10 so far. I only have like a top 3, top 5, and I think Arcane is in my top 3. And I think if you haven't seen the show, you should give it a watch. It's so amazing. And yeah, I think everyone, every age, every gender, I think everyone will love this show. The animation of this show is like 3D mixed with 2D effects of like smoke, fire, like the magical effects of it. And it all works very well, especially in the action scenes. I was not expected to get this blown away by the animation, since, I don't know, I can't call it simple because it's not really simple animation, but it looks simple to the eye. Like, you know, if you compare it, I don't like comparing too many things, but if you compare it to like Spider-Verse animation, this looks more simple than Spider-Verse, but it has a lot of different effects going on with the 3D and 2D mixed, which I feel like makes it a little more complicated than Spider-Verse in certain ways, but not overall complicated. But I really do think that the major standout of the animation is when Jinx is on screen and she's having these certain, like, I don't know, struggles with her mind, and she's having these moments, and then the drawings and stress of animation go over the screen with the little faces and little, like, I don't know, little faces that are always on her bombs come on the screen, and the drawings that flash up really quick. I think that is what this makes this animation really stand out for me. Everything about Jinx and everything about the fights in this show really stands out, especially when they're using the magical weapons, which I haven't really fully understood the magical weapons so far, but I still need to look up the lore on some of that. But I think the arcane magic is quite interesting, and it's quite a cool thing to really understand. So I'm looking forward to really understanding that more. The animation really works so well, as I said, during the fight scenes, and I think the fight between Echo and Jinx gives us, as an example of that, it gives us one of the best animated fight scenes I think I've seen of all time. And the final scene gives me chills just thinking about it, like how that's animated, the bomb going towards the building and then it hits the building and it, like, the bomb shows on the glass when it explodes. I think that is just I don't know, I think that is just such a cool way of showing certain things happen. And the fight between Echo and Jinx, like I said, I'll put a little scene of that on screen right now. It's one of those scenes where it shows a different perspective, a different things happening, and it shows little flashes of so much stuff happening, so many drawing effects on there, so many 2D effects. I think that animation is what I've fallen in love with, like 3D mixed with 2D. Because I think 3D mixed with 2D, you can do so much more with your animated show, and I think that's just awesome. I don't know, I feel like 3D and 2D might be some of my favorite animation to this day. The soundtrack of this show is also a big standout. You have so many different tracks, so many different great tracks that fit into so many different episodes. Like, I feel like the soundtrack of so many different things, like, you don't really hear it too much in a movie or TV show that it's featured in, but this one you hear almost every song in so many different episodes, and it fits the theme of the show. It fits the steampunk kind of nature of the show, kind of like rock nature of it, and it kind of also reminds me of the Spider-Verse soundtracks. You know, they find awesome famous artists and put them in these kind of mainstream show movie soundtracks, which I think is awesome. And Enemy by Imagine Dragons is still on repeat for me. Such a good intro track, and it makes me not want to skip the intro. And the intro is animated like in a great way, but the soundtrack behind it, Enemy, just makes it so much better. And what could have been by Sting in the final scene over the last episode makes you feel so much in an already like adrenaline filled moment. It's crazy how much that song makes you feel like it makes you feel completed, but it also makes you like feel so empty inside, filled with dread of what's to happen and what war is going to happen in this next season. Like, there's so many different loose ends that end at the final season, but so many different ends that open. like at the final episode to see what happens in that show. I think the soundtrack, it fits so well. You have so many different songs in each episode that really fit with the moment, fit with the show, because that's really what it is, a steampunk science fiction. So I think they really did so well in that part. And we have strong female leads in this show. This show gets it right where so many other things are failing today. It's like so many different superhero movies and shows are struggling with producing great and likable female characters. Like, I feel like some shows and movies are trying to force female characters down our throats, and not, like, they're trying to force them without actually writing them a good script, writing them a good story. That's what I hate most. Like, I love great female characters, but if you can't make them great and can't make them likable, then I'm just not going to like them a lot. I feel like Marvel especially is struggling with that right now. Like, you need to write a good female character before producing them on screen. That's the number one issue, I think, with Marvels right now. Some of their characters, especially men and female, just aren't written too well and just aren't written in a likable way. And I think Arcane is the opposite. It features some strong female characters on the good and bad side with likable and complex traits and storylines that, I don't know, sometimes I haven't seen before. I don't think it's been a while since I've seen some strong female leads like this in any show, in any animated show. It's been a long time, and I think it's really well done how they do it. The writers on the show did so well at creating these characters that you really care for, and some of the evil traits of them, you still care for those characters and you still turn for them in some of the episodes. Like, you really get with what they're feeling. You have all the emotions hit because of these characters. You really end up caring for who they are and what they're trying to fight for in this overall steampunk world of the top side and the underground, and how they're having to fight with each other. And you have different female characters who come from the top side, different female characters come from the bottom side, Zon, which is basically the bottom side where they fight. And one of those female characters is Vi, voiced by Haley Steinfeld. One of the two basically lead female characters. You have both of the two female characters, then you have some supporting female characters. Haley Steinfeld, she's amazing in all she does, and her two big voice acting roles is this and Spider-Verse, so she's really having a great time with her life these days, and I think she's doing season 2 soon. I don't really know when season 2 is going to come out, but she brings so much to an already great character that, like, it's a great character. She's so strong. This is like a strong female character. Like, she can do a lot. She has so many great fight scenes. And she holds, like, she's very strong with holding on to, like, different other female characters like Caitlyn and Jinx. And as I said, her fight scenes with Sevica in the last drop works on so many different levels, and she, like, never gets up. She gets knocked down, but she gets back up. It's so awesome how you have female characters that are that strong that can just get back up without, like, male representation in the show helping them out. That's why I think that this show has some great written female characters, and they are just, I don't know what more I can say. They're just great. But our next character is Powder / Jinx. They're the same character, but they have very different emotional qualities, and this is probably the most complex character of the series, and I gotta say, it's my personal favorite of the series. She gives kind of Harley Quinn and Joker vibes, but she's built kind of very differently than those two, but I just find some similarities in those two characters. And she's probably the most emotionally damaged character that you'll find in this series. She's very damaged. Powder is angry. Powder is the one we start with in the first act, the first 3 episodes. And she's like just a little kid. She wants to go along with the group, wants to have all these adventures, and she wants to prove herself by creating these little machines, little bombs to help everyone out. But everyone calls her a Jinx because everything goes wrong when she's around. And Powder is angry at being left behind in episode 3 and tries to go help. But while she tries to help, she gets Vander, Clagger, and Milo killed in the process with her bombs that she makes. And that's emotionally like a draining scene right there. It left me kind of broken by the episode 3. This show works on so many different levels, but it works on a level where it's told in 3 arcs. Like, they're each 3 episodes, episode 1 to 3, episode 4 to 6, and then episode 7 to 9. Those are the three acts of the show, and this is the end of act 1, end of episode 3, and I just was so drained by that moment where she's just left behind by her sister. and she has Silco come and rescue her, and she's just crying, man. It's so sad how she's just left and she's turned into Jinx. By episode 4, we get the big time jump. We see a new person, and her name is Jinx, because she's fully adopted that name, kind of, because everyone called her that name because that's what she was, a Jinx, and she was kind of a Jinx in the end of episode 3. It's because no one really helped her out. No one really came to help her in those moments that she was feeling down. And she is still struggling. In episode 4 to 8, she's still struggling between the two powers of being Powder and Jinx, which I did love to see the emotional rift of those two things happening to her. But once the finale hits, she has officially changed the Jinx. You know, she's been that emotionally drained and damaged during this whole show. In the end of the finale, she has to come to a decision, and she's finally changed fully to Jinx, and that's like a full character moment and a full character, like, I don't know, a full character arc that really makes me appreciate the show even more. Like, what you can do in 9 episodes with one character is absolutely insane. Brings me to our next character, which is Caitlyn, voiced by Katie Leung. Another pretty strong female character. She's a supporting character who we met early on being a childhood friend with Jayce in the first 3 episodes. And later, after the time jump, we see her and Vi start to build a connection of which somewhat brews into a romance by the end, which I kind of am liking, because they're not rushing the romance and you don't really know if it's a full romance. But maybe we'll see more of that brew in season 2. And later in the episodes, she gets caught by Jinx, which is a brilliant scene filled with some like horror moments when she's just wiping down the mirror and you see Jinx in the background. I was like shook by that scene. I was like, oh no, get out of there, Caitlyn. But you actually do like Caitlyn a lot in this show. She's just a supporting female character at the start, but then she turns into like more of a leading character with Vi, because they're both teaming up, trying to find Jinx, but also trying to like help the top siders and Zon siders. I guess I just like to call them top siders and bottom siders. I guess that's really my main feel of the show. But honestly, I can't wait to see where her character goes next, because she fled with Vi at the end of the season 1, and I can't wait to see where they're gonna go with this. Where are they gonna go with Vi and Caitlyn? Where are they gonna go with Caitlyn especially? Because I'm very interested to see how that relationship is going to brew. Next up, we got Jayce, played by Kevin Alejandro, and Viktor, played by Harvey Lloyd. 2 interesting characters that I wasn't fully on board with at the start of the season, but once their storyline gets going, it's probably one of the best storylines in the show, and they kind of hold the storyline of testing the arcane magic. And after the time jump, the arcane magic, after they tested it, it changed kind of like the society of the topsiders and how they use it more. But they're also kind of scared of it during those conversations of by the end of the season, they're also getting kind of scared of the magic and what it's doing, what the weapons it creates, which is kind of an interesting way to tell the story of magic, which I kind of find very interesting. I really did love all the scenes of them testing it. I really do love Viktor's storyline and how he's basically dealing with his leg and how the magic is kind of helping him, but how he's fighting off the magic in certain scenes because it doesn't mix with his blood. And I think that the way the magic helps them change, like in different ways, I think it's awesome. Like you see Jayce becoming like one of the leaders, but Viktor is still kind of like left behind because Jayce got all the credit for it, but Viktor really did help him a lot. But those 2 characters I think are great. They're 2 supporting characters that I think are going to get a lot more scenes in the second season with the war coming up. But then we got Vander, voiced by JB Blanc, one character that we don't see much of because he's also killed off by the end of episode 3. Sadly killed off by one of Powder's bombs, but Vander was shown to be a great father-like figure for Vi and Powder in those first 3 episodes, and he tried to protect Powder and Vi with everything he had in episode 3. Like, he really tried to fight off all those creatures with the bad purple stuff mixed with their blood. I forgot what that purple stuff was called, but he tried to fight them all off. It was literally awesome to see him just fight for Vi and Powder with all he had. And I hope somehow we get to see more of him in the next season. I wonder if there's a way they can bring back dead characters, but if they can, I would be totally for that. Like, if you can bring back a dead character somehow, like a reincarnation of them with the arcane magic, I feel like that would be cool. That kind of builds it to our next character, which is Silco, voiced by Jason Spisak. Probably my second favorite character in the show, and I also think he's the second most complex character in the show, because Silco starts out as the main villain for the series of the Zon side of the world, the bottom side of the world, trying to fight off the top side of the world. He's trying to basically make it equal, but he's also trying to take over. He wants to get out of Zon and trying to take over the top side. And as he actually takes care of Jinx by that second half of the show. He takes her in after episode 3 when everyone left her, and I really did love that. I do love their like kind of father and daughter relationship after episode 4, and how it kind of builds more and more, and he just starts caring for her more and more like Vander did. And the reason why he's my second favorite character is the reason where he realizes what Vander did. Vander just wanted to protect Powder and Vi, and you see that scene in the last episode, I think it was, where Silco is sitting next to Vander's statue, and he finally realizes, he's like, I see what you were doing, Vander, and he's like, I just want to protect Jinx with all my life. Like, he doesn't want to give up Jinx to the topsiders. He just wants to protect her. And even though he's trying to get peace with the topsiders, he doesn't want to give up Jinx and have her go to prison or have her killed, which I think is just a great emotionally turning moment, because you have such a bad villain at the start of the show, but then you have such a different character by the end. And I just loved Silco and Jinx's relationship, and I thought it was very sad when Jinx like accidentally kills Silco in like her mania, when she has like all these thoughts coming in and she just starts shooting and she accidentally kills him kind of, and she struggles to control herself in that moment. So I think that's kind of her not wanting to kill him, but also kind of like the Powder side coming through and killing him. But still, I love Silco and Jinx's relationship, and I hope he also comes back somehow, because I think he was kind of turning to good in that final episode. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like he's a really bad villain, but sometimes I feel like he's had a lot of heart, and he's just fighting against that villainous side of himself. So I hope he comes back soon. Maybe not though, who knows? I don't know what they're doing, but we have the time jump, the big time jump after episode 3. I think it's done so well and very needed for like an animated show like this, because the audience was kind of like emotionally drained and changed, especially with our characters being emotionally torn apart, with Vi and Powder being emotionally torn apart, but torn apart literally. Like, they're not with each other anymore, and I think it's brilliant the way we see our characters realized again in episode 4. Like, I wasn't imagining to see our characters this changed in episode 4. Like, Jinx is literally Jinx in episode 4, and Powder's locked, and I mean Vi is locked in a jail at the end of episode 4. I wasn't expecting that, and to see that Piltover changed so much by the arcane magic, I wasn't expecting that. I think that the time jump works, because if you have an emotionally draining moment at the end of a certain episode and the time jump, I feel like it can work if you really have a good realization of your characters. And I think the creators had a very well realization of our two main characters being Vi and Powder / Jinx. I want to go over my favorite episodes of the show. I think episode 3 is of course one of my favorites, because it's one of the best television episodes I think I've ever seen. As I said, emotionally draining, emotionally changing for so many different characters. The final 20 minutes is crazy what happens. The standoff between Silco and Vander, and then you have the scene where Powder comes to try to save everyone, but she ends up killing 3 people in the scene. It's kind of crazy how she's just trying to help, but she just makes everything worse, and that's why she's kind of a Jinx, but at the same time she wasn't trying to be a Jinx. And episode 4 is also one of my favorites, because as I said, you get to see where our characters are at after the time jump, and you get to see the start of Jinx and her character development literally strengthen, and kind of her being more of a complex character. And you get to see how Piltover changed, how Zon changed, how Silco changed, how he's kind of the leader after Vander died. So that's another favorite episode. In episode 6, the reuniting of Vi and Jinx, how they fight off these different people. I like that a lot. And I think that she stood with the thing that Vi told her to have so she could find her. I thought that was an amazing moment. In episode 7, just because the fight between Echo and Jinx is one of the best animated fights I've ever seen. The animation of how it's done is perfect. That's a scene that I will go back to so many different times. And episode 9, the finale, I think is also one of the best television episodes I've ever seen. Just everything just building up, and then it just falls apart with the end of the episode, where Jinx is she's turned fully into Jinx by the end, and you have that great cliffhanger of she's launching the bomb at Piltover while they're all having the meeting to basically talk about having peace between Zon and Piltover. Like, they're literally agreeing to have peace, somewhat of a peace contract between them. and then Jinx launches the bomb. So she's going to start basically another war between them. And I feel like Jinx is going to be a big part of that war and a big character of that war, and kind of like a leader. I feel like she's kind of changed to like Silco's a character. She's kind of like going to be the leader, and she's going to be the whole Jinx character is going to be so cool to see how they take her season 2. I can't wait. Leave your favorite episodes down in the comments. But yeah, overall, I think that this show is just spectacular on so many different levels. So easily rewatchable, I think, because it's so short, but you have so many different complex storylines and characters in these like 40-minute episodes. Like if Disney Plus could do this, they would have some great shows. But the animation, as I said, perfect. Soundtrack, amazing. The voice cast, as I said, they're so great at making these emotions come true. And I love Jinx, I love Silco, love Vi, love all these characters. But I also have a love-hate relationship with some of them, I can admit that. But as I said, if you haven't seen this show, go watch it. It's so good. But overall, I'm going to give Arcane Season 1 a perfect 10 out of 10. I haven't given many shows a 10 out of 10. I think I've only given 3, and this is one of them. It deserves it. It's so good. Make sure you leave a like on this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to my channel. I upload almost every day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.